Really?
We get sunshine, then we get rain, and now it's partial clearing over Bellevue, but now the clouds are rolling in, and it's just one of those weird kind of northwest days, you know?
Exactly.
Well, what's going on traffic-wise?
Northbound I-5 is slow from North Boeing Field into downtown. Westbound 520 is sluggish on the bridge deck. Eastbound 520 is thick from Montlake to the east side. Southbound 405 is already messy through the S-curves, and there are reports of an accident at the south end of the Ballard Bridge right at 15th and Emerson. Lots of backups in that area from that. You'll want to avoid it.
Charlie and Tyre in Florida, we got a report for you coming up next on Cube.
1-800-VECTOR-1. We're U.S. West Cellular. Call on our experience.
Crown West this afternoon, KXRX 96.5 Seattle.
I found this footage, I think a couple years ago now, and it was one of the trippiest things I'd found on YouTube in a long time. July 10th, 1985. Some DOT video driving between Kirkland and Redmond.
101.5 KPLZ, here's Keith Sweat.
Magic 108 and Randy Lundquist on the job. 3:40 and Storm Kennedy's forecast showers. Possible thunder showers here a bit breezy this afternoon. Showers tapering off tonight, though. Becoming partly cloudy and cooler with lows predicted tonight into the mid-30s. Could have some sunshine tomorrow. Currently 43, and Mother Nature's favorite group is coming up next with music from 79 at Magic 108 FM.
When the sun goes down, something special starts to happen. Call it a feeling, but the music just sounds better. And the night belongs to Chet Buchanan.
Talk about nostalgia. I think even just seeing all the old cars. It's like I could just sit and watch this kind of stuff for hours.
Where you'll always get to the bottom of food prices. Everett, Snohomish, and West Olympia.
This fall, KPLZ has it all. More music, more variety, and thousands of dollars for you to win. Is it a man? Is it a woman? And where will the KPLZ mystery person be next? Find out starting September on KPLZ. Nick.
Well, if you want to go with Uncle Vernon and Aunt Agnes and Phoenix, don't go.
Computer technology was something that we just watched in the movies. It was science fiction. It was real in the world growing up in the 80s and 90s, but technocracy was the stuff of science fiction movies and novels, and it still seemed far away. I don't know. Been waiting for a reason to play this footage. Just for my own amusement, I guess. My own little nostalgic journey to share. My little time machine boulevard drive. Back to 1985. Nobody's walking around with a cell phone. Nobody's driving an electric vehicle. Bill Gates is probably stealing Windows somewhere as we speak. while most of us were just oblivious and enjoying the summer sun. The suburbs of Seattle, on the shores of Lake Washington. And this is where I grew up. What a trip, dude. On the left, that's the seafood restaurant I worked at in high school. I think it's still there. But yeah, Kirkland doesn't look like this anymore. Microsoft and Amazon, ton of other tech companies soon came in and drastically changed the landscape of the Seattle area. Alright, you ready to come back to 2025? Here we go.
And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that. Because decent, pragmatic, fair-minded people, they want us to tackle the issues that they see around them. And of course, the truth is, we won't solve our problems if we don't also take on the root causes. For too many years, it's been too easy for people to come here, slip into the shadow economy, and remain here illegally. Because, frankly, we've been squeamish about saying things that are clearly true. It's not just that it's not compassionate left-wing politics to rely on labour that exploits foreign workers and undercuts fair wages, but the simple fact that every nation needs to have control over its borders. We do need to know who is in our country. Our immigration system does need to be fair if we want to maintain that binding contract that our politics is built on. Otherwise, it undermines trust, undermines people's faith that we're on their side, and their belief that the state can and will work for them.
Digital ID, sold as a revolution in convenience, one login for every government service, immediate bank verification, and no need for multiple passwords. Digitisation, efficiency, progress, and a means to combat crime and illegal working. Yet, as many of us are aware, the real story is that the same system that promises frictionless access also holds the power to silently lock you out from your job, your bank account, travel, and even healthcare. You see, with digital ID, one digital credential becomes the gatekeeper to daily life. The technocrats want you to believe that it's an opt-in, a yes-no choice to download and participate with their app and its interface, as per Keir Starmer's recent announcement, which unsurprisingly sparked enormous outcry. But the reality is that digital ID rollout is via an incremental, covert approach. The UK's real push for digital ID is via a one login system, the gov.uk wallet, and a register of digital verification services. Together, this represents a textbook incremental rollout by stealth. The technological and legal plumbing is built first. It's framed as voluntary, private intermediaries are enlisted, and paper can then be marginalised. Sadly, the same architecture is under construction in the US, under different names and without utilising the phrases of digital or national ID, crucially. Now I'm going to compare the differences and similarities between the UK and US rollout in the following table, which highlights the British developments against the US parallels. First, government anchor systems. The US has login.gov, which is already used by the IRS, Social Security, veterans, and so on. At the state level, mobile driver's licenses are rolling out under the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS-backed standards. Together, you have an equivalent digital wallet with no name. Second, the UK uses statutory underpinning, while in the US this is likely to come via executive orders and agency rulemaking instead of a Digital ID Act. DHS and other agencies can run pilots or create new data sharing rules. This then sidesteps the politically toxic notion of a national ID, while the scope is expanded. Third, certified private providers are vital to the rollout of this mechanism, as this avoids direct government coercion. The parallel to the UK's digital verification services is the ID.me, Experian, LexisNexis, and others, who already verify identity for unemployment benefits, IRS accounts, and veteran services. They function as the gatekeepers under contract. This offers the same plausible deniability by being able to claim that it isn't a government ID because they're private, but functionally, of course, it is. Fourth, as ever, the Trojan horse is convenience and efficiency. Employers and banks are nudged into checks to ensure liability from fraud or anti-money laundering. The US focuses upon e-verify, which is voluntary but is likely to become mandatory in time. If it's integrated with digital ID, the combined effect becomes indistinguishable from compulsion. Next is the functional compulsion strategy, where paper processes are deliberately discouraged due to cost or inefficiency to promote digital as default. The TSA already requires Real ID compliant cards at airports. MDLs are designed for scanning, not visual inspection. IRS and unemployment claims are faster to complete online rather than via paper. Here, we really need to advocate for a law that guarantees equal service for non-digital credentials. Penultimately, the timeline for the UK versus the US shows that the UK is lagging the UK slightly, but not by much. I suspect the end of Parliament is truly being planned in the UK as key target date. The US passed the Real ID in 2005 and full enforcement was passed in May this year. Login.gov is expanding rapidly. Ahead of 2030, it would seem plausible that de facto national digital ID is likely to be in place without a congressional vote.
So that was, I thought, a nice summary of the UK digital ID agenda going on right now and comparing it with how it's being implemented in the American context. And that was from a channel called Miles Harris. And I'm going to have a bunch of links in the description today so you can go and watch the full-length videos of what I'm playing clips from. So I have a lot here, so we'll see how many I actually get to. But lots of people have been talking about the recent announcement by Prime Minister Starmer in the UK, and another clip that I came across this week that sort of underscores the fact that the digital ID is something that they are absolutely rolling out worldwide, and it kind of ties in the UK and the United States, was this discussion from some world summit a few months back featuring Larry Ellison and Tony Blair.
We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
So you're really, through the use of this, you're revolutionizing the way government works, right? The services it provides, the way that it operates. What about things like financial management, procurement? How can AI help a government operate more efficiently, more effectively, give a more direct and better service to the citizen?
Well, we have these modern financial systems. So, countries can, and all, for example, Oracle has this thing called Fusion Financials. And Fusion Financials is chock full of AI agents that help you do a better job, predict what supplier might be late, what supplier, again, might not deliver on time. It helps you put things out for bid if you want to bid things. It knows that certain transactions are confidential. Sometimes military transactions are confidential. It helps you procure things, manage the budget, see what agencies are likely to go over budget. So you can tell early on something in the fourth month if an agency is going to miss their budget, and if necessary, take corrective measures. Just like you can know early on if your farmers, if your agricultural output is going to miss its targets, and you're going to have a crop shortfall, you can take action by futures crops from other areas. The AI system will help you do that. But again, the secret is to get all of that data in one place. Without having the basic data, it cannot answer the question about your country. Well, I think one of the biggest changes, I can talk about my country and a little bit about the UK as well. People now expect in a democracy that we provide a high level of service. Government provides a high level of service. Healthcare, and when people expect high quality healthcare, people even talk about healthcare being a human right. We can deliver healthcare at a much lower cost. I mean, not only do we get much better outcomes, but by early diagnosis, better therapeutics, better population health, and we can get all of that as long as countries will put their data, their healthcare data, all of it, in a single place where we can use AI to help manage the care of all of the patients and the population at large. We can deliver a very, very high quality service.
I actually hadn't seen that one until the other day. And for most people who've been watching my channel for any length of time, I realized that talking about the digital ID and why it's not a good thing is probably like the most redundant thing imaginable. But I also know that there are new people, not just to my channel, but people who are just now coming to this place of questioning the agenda behind everything from the COVID measures and all the crazy political developments of the past few years, and just the whole rapid development of all these digital systems and the biometric compliance and everything. So maybe this video is largely for those folks. I don't know. I do think it's honestly more important than probably the majority of stuff going on in the news right now, and so if you are all new to this, even though it's basically not even fringe conspiracy stuff anymore, but it's practically mainstream discussion at this point, then if you want more of a full expose, I'd recommend things like this documentary that I finally got around to watching the other day, called, appropriately enough, The Agenda, Their Vision, Your Future. And here's a short clip from that.
We've been drawn into this digital spy network in the name of convenience, connectivity, safety, and especially entertainment. The 3D world of cyberspace creates virtual lives that are often more exciting than reality.
Why is this technology being developed? It's all for the culmination of this digital prison from which there will be no escape after all the switches are turned on.
The critical switch would be the introduction of those digital IDs and central bank financial control. A world of zero trust.
Zero trust is based on a simple principle. Never trust, always verify.
Zero trust is a protocol that is implemented by cybersecurity companies And what it really means is we don't trust you, and you have to prove who you are all the time, 24/7. So think of it as going from a world of implicit allow to default deny. In tomorrow's world, once zero trust is implemented in, say, retail, everything will be behind plexiglass doors with a 3D camera, and it'll only be unlocked through your digital identity and facial recognition if you have the available carbon credits in your digital currency.
If you've reached the limit of your allowance, it could be access denied. This would apply to fuel, to travel, to meat and dairy products, to clothes and other consumer goods. Because everything in life could be valued by its carbon footprint. Even access to the internet could be denied.
So the new world of zero trust is really a world of locks. It's like an inverted prison. You are supposedly free to roam about, but everything you want to access is behind lock and key.
And also, fittingly enough, the Radiohead album Kid A just had its 25th year anniversary, which is kind of crazy, because I remember when that album came out, and I was actually living in the city of Seattle at the time, so it's kind of one of those memory association things that when I listen to it now, it takes me back to that time and place, and it's hard to believe that that was already 2.5 decades ago. Like, that's what the oldies were when I was in the 90s, and you're listening to stuff from the 60s and 70s, that was oldies. And now, like, Radiohead is oldies. I don't even know how to process that. But when I look at the footage of Seattle, now particularly all this new stuff in the South Lake Union neighborhood, in this area where the Amazon spheres, this used to be called Belltown. Is it even still called Belltown anymore? I don't know. I just don't even recognize it anymore. And I haven't been back to Seattle since like 2012, I think. Even though I'm only a few hours away down here in lovely Portland, but yeah, it's just crazy looking at it now. But both Kid A and their previous album, OK Computer, were pretty fascinating albums that came out in the late 90s and early 2000s and that whole era, because they combined all the rich melodies and intricate rhythms, but, you had the angelic kind of vocals of Tom York, but it always had this undertone of like the very dystopian-esque, the sound effects and the techno elements and just the artwork and all the Stanley Donwood artwork that I admit I was always just kind of enamored with his whole style. Just that whole dystopian vibe of Radiohead that I always kind of connected with, and I don't know, whatever, I don't care if it's cliche or uncool at this point. I'm going full Kid A in my editing style today, so... Because it's true that since the late 90s and early 2000s, I feel like I've been pondering these themes. These dystopian themes, I mean, even in the late 90s, living in Seattle, trying to figure out how to get into the local music scene and how to engage in, like, creative pursuits, but remaining true to your independent ethos and pay the rent. And, I was going to art school down on the Seattle waterfront in the late 90s, and you could already feel this shift happening, the shift away from print media and everything moving into the digital, and it was like the old way of graphic design was dying, and it was all about the internet and web design and Flash, Photoshop, and all this other stuff. And the grunge days were over, but you had all the new indie bands like Death Cab for Cutie and Modest Mouse and a bunch of others who hadn't yet gone all mainstream, so it was like the Seattle scene reborn after Kurt Cobain died. But I remember visiting a small little punk rock church that met in a theater in the U District, led by this young pastor guy named Mark Driscoll, and even then I thought he was a rather arrogant SOB. I don't know, I'm totally rabbit trailing into memory land here, but, that's part of what music does, right? It, like, connects you to certain time periods of your life, kind of like when you hear old radio segments from the 80s, and it, like, snaps you back to those simpler times, and It's crazy, but I don't know. It all sounds so corny now, but at the same time, maybe it's not so corny after all, having like spent the past 10 plus years making videos and before that writing blog posts for I don't know how many years. And then eventually basically finding the community, my favorite word, a community of independent-minded people where art and journalism and spirituality and current events and creativity, they all come together and collide, except it wasn't in the form I was originally seeking, like living in the city and trying to find it like in your neighborhood or in a job per se. It was, ironically found it online just like everybody else, where we were all gradually herded into this virtual reality space. Man, it's crazy just thinking about virtual reality in the 90s, this corny concept. But, as the analog world slowly faded away, virtual reality has manifested, And your actual geographic location seemed to matter less and less the more we're connected by the internet, and we weren't limited to a local city like the way that a radio station was, or limited to a national audience the way TV and film was. It was all of us around the world going through this digital revolution, and, first we had that .com bubble era where there was all this promise and excitement about how individuals were supposedly going to be so empowered by the advent of digital media. I suppose that was somewhat true in many ways. Being able to have access to so much more information than we ever had when we were growing up, and the ability to share it with millions of people at almost no cost. I mean, that's still kind of blows my mind. And even almost to where it feels like the closest thing that we have to a time machine, where I can find weird clips of some guy driving around, the neighborhood that I grew up in. Man, that was like such a crazy find to kind of relive, get a glimpse of your childhood that you could have never, it's just bizarre. But is that why DARPA created the internet? So that we could just be entertained and nostalgic and share music with Napster. Remember Napster? Was the internet a gift that humanity just gave to itself? Was it the next logical step in our evolution as a species? Was it all an inevitability? I think that's the part of it all that I've found myself pondering probably more than anything else over the past couple of decades. The question of inevitability. And obviously I do not believe that humanity is evolving, nor that the evolutionary theory is anything but an absurd lie that has been foisted upon mankind, who has willingly embraced the delusion, for the most part, and rejected our Creator. But still, when you read the Bible with any amount of seriousness, you can't escape the matter of prophecy. You can't avoid the fact that Scripture speaks of things to come, and it tells us both how God made the world and how it will end. How the fallen world will end, that is, and give way to an eternal and everlasting state of perfection after a time of great trial and rebellion. Is this technological prison an inevitability? That's the question, I keep coming back to over the years. And I found myself feeling torn so much of the time, where you're frustrated by your friends and family who don't really want to talk about it at all. And they just want to stick their fingers in their ears and pretend like it's all fine and it's not unfolding in front of our eyes, like all over the place. But then you're also butting up against the people in like the truther community, the truther world, who get upset if basically your message is that God has prophesied that this is what's going to happen and there's ultimately no way of stopping it. Sooner or later we're going to have to go through it. And yet we have to resist, but we also have to surrender to the fact that in the end only God himself can bring this resurrected Babylon to its knees. And I guess that's almost like a paradox to a lot of people. There's the inevitability that we must nevertheless resist with everything in us. And, eschatology is the big fancy word that theologians like to use, but at this point, so much has been discussed online about technocracy and Bible prophecy. I mean, I almost find myself wondering how many people out there are even left that haven't at least heard of the Mark of the Beast, or have some vague idea of the Antichrist system. Even Peter Thiel's talking about it. It's kind of astounding. But what is also astounding is that we've not only lived through this digital revolution, but we've all lived through the COVID 1984 affair, which was arguably the first media-created psyop to affect the entire world population in the manner and scale that it did. The biggest false flag yet. And today, most folks are eager to try and more or less pretend like it never happened, particularly those people who bought into all the propaganda. Most of them just want to memory hole it, sadly enough. And it's sad, but yet understandable, I guess, because there's an underlying sense, I imagine, of just being able to cope with the ramifications of being deceived on that level, right? When it comes to, what was actually put into your body and what was the agenda going on there, and just processing that possibility of being duped and controlled and possibly even targeted for a slow destruction by that kind of operation. I understand why that's hard for people to even contemplate. And so the same folks who made that Agenda documentary have put out an interview with Dr. Mike Yeadon, who was very vocal during COVID, and it's called Final Warning, and I wanted to play a clip from that as well. So hopefully they don't mind. Once again, I'm going to have links in the description because I want people to go, watch the whole thing. So I'm trying to spread the word here. I'm not trying to steal anybody's work. But I thought it was a very, sobering report. And from somebody who is possibly one of the most qualified and experienced individuals to come out of the biotech sector to talk about COVID and the connection to the digital ID.
Probably better qualified than any other single person speaking out. They have been designed intentionally to injure, kill, and reduce fertility. I've never claimed it would do it to a lot of people, or that it would be quick. In fact, specifically, I remember saying at the time, I don't think they want to risk injuring and killing too many people early on, because people will spot it. What I expected once I started looking around and noticing other things, like there was a talk of electronic money, getting rid of cash. And there was talk of digital ID. I remember Tony Blair trying to do that in the 90s. And frankly, I joined the dots and I could see a world in which you were required to have digital ID, that cash was removed, so you had to spend only using digital money. And I thought, you know what? If I was the evil person, I would say that your digital ID will not be valid unless you're up to date with your injections. And I came across a document from the EU. It's called EU Vabeco, V-A-B-E-C-O. And it's a scheme that started in 2018. Bottom line is that the EU Commission anticipates a future in which every EU citizen has a digital ID whose validity is governed by whether or not they've been injected with the latest mRNA-based, quote, vaccine. So they anticipate regular injection for the rest of your life. That's, if you, and the idea is it'll improve health and safety as you travel around, which is a lie. It's a lie. You being vaccinated doesn't protect anybody. In fact, I would recommend no one has any vaccines at all, from what I've discovered in the last year or so. But honestly, when have governments ever given a flying one about your health and safety? You must know that a claim that you must do something for your health and safety is what is called, it's an excuse, it's an ostensible reason. These people who are trying to take our lives away from us always use two things. It's always two things. They'll tell you about something using the excuse, the ostensible reason. So in this case, it'll be you have to be jabbed to protect you from marauding viruses. The real reason is I'm afraid they want to make you ill and kill you. That is the truth. It's absolutely clear. There's really only one senior institution. It's a group of people who you can see as supranational groups from the UN, WHO, the International Panel on Climate Change, the World Economic Forum, Bilderberg's. You should see them as the same. They're different manifestations. Trilateral Commission. Keir Starmer's a member of the Trilateral Commission, the only elected British politician who's a member of this globalist group, at least that particular one. They're all founded by the same group of people. They've been running for decades to much longer than a century. And I believe they believe their destiny is to control all us little people, all us. They see us as useless eaters. Useless eaters. Where have you heard that phrase before? What happens to useless eaters, do you think? I think they believe it's their destiny, maybe their obligation, to take control of everyone, everywhere, forever, using digital means. So digital ID, digital money, geolocation, and an obligation to be injected, something like that. You don't need much more than that. The control mechanism is so frighteningly simple. I warn people, and I'm not going to sign up for digital ID. I'm probably going to regret that statement, but you don't need a new global single format editable digital biometric ID. But that's what digital ID means. Single global editable biometric digital ID. I'm warning you. I'm trying to help. It's the last really important decision you will get to make. If you sign up for it, the people who are taking over do not require your consent, your collaboration, you to do anything after that. And this is why I'm going to tell you why. Even I, as someone who's not involved in finance, I'm clever enough to see that the debts of all major countries has been deliberately piled on and escalated to the point where it's obvious to all of us that the debts can never be repaid. We're struggling even to service the interest on the loans. So at some point, I predict with great confidence that an event like 2008, the global financial crisis, only 1,000 times worse, will occur. And that will mean every country is bankrupt at the same time. All businesses would be bankrupt at the same time. And to find out what will happen to you, if like me, you're sort of comfortable and middle class, early retired and got a bit of saving, you should be really frightened what I'm going to tell you. David Rogers Webb. David Rogers Webb. He is my matching half in finance. He's a retired hedge fund manager who discovered that the laws pertaining to private property rights have been altered over the last 50 or 60 years surreptitiously in every country on the planet. So when you think you own something, I invite you to look in. If you've got an investment account, you will find now, you won't find any statements to do with ownership. You'll only find the phrase beneficial owner, beneficial ownership. It makes no difference most of the time. You can buy it and sell it. Let's say it's shares, stocks, bonds. You can receive dividends and so on. But the small print says, in the event of a large enough default, all the financial intermediaries who owe money to the people they borrowed it from, and then they owe money to the people they borrowed it from, in the event of a large enough default, the senior secured creditors, the people at the top, may seize the assets ever pledged as collateral by the layers below them. That includes your house, your pension, any stocks and shares you have in an account with an intermediary like Hargreaves Lansdown, AJ Bell and the like, JP Morgan. Basically, legal theft of all of your assets will occur, I think, within hours of a large enough financial crisis that I've just discussed. So even if you didn't think anyone was plotting against you, I think you would agree with me that, in fact, I factored in it when I was doing retirement planning. I assumed there would be at least one other 2008 during my life, and I set out my affairs so that I would probably be able to survive that. But we can't survive this. So yes, I think there will come a time between now and 2030 where legally all your assets will be stolen. I remember there's a lady called Catherine Austin Fitz, who's a finance lady. She says, I believe that possession, where we're talking about objects, not humans, but when it comes to objects, you really only own it if you can sit on it and defend it at the point of a gun. And I know she says it to get a laugh, but there is something to that. If you've left any assets with a third party, maybe you own some gold and it's in the bank. Maybe you do have, a large pension with a financial intermediary. Upon a large enough financial crisis that is being engineered, because, as I'll explain in a moment, look how useful this is. At the moment of that big enough financial crisis, all of the institutions will be bankrupt and all of the assets will be moved legally, stolen legally, and they will belong to the senior secured creditors, because those assets have at some point been used in a financial transaction. There's no point in you protesting that they haven't told you they borrowed it and it's not really theirs. This has been tested in a major court in New York, where one financial institution was both the custodian and acting on behalf of senior creditors. So it stole the assets of another of its clients. And it went to court, and I'm afraid it was found that they were legally able to do that. So David Rogers Webb, a free book called The Great Taking is my gift to you. You should go and read that. So that's part of the takeover. It is a takeover, it's a global coup. And I've explained that if you sign up for digital ID, it'll be the last really important decision you make, because your digital ID will be the only thing that your governments, institutions, and anybody authorized by those holding power will recognize you through. So you won't exist anymore. You'll be replaced by a QR code. You are not a number, you're an address to some resources. And that makes it particularly dangerous, because those resources can be edited, and one of those fields for sure will be your vaccination status. And I'm absolutely sure, because I've seen it written down in multiple documents, that your digital ID will only remain valid if you comply with the conditions of validity. So one of them will be, have you had your latest recommended or mandated jabs? And because of the fact that I'm qualified in toxicology and worked for decades with others in what's called rational drug design, when I look at these jabs, the constituents, I am certain, formally certain, that they were designed to hurt you. And so, the digital ID will lose validity unless you roll your sleeve up. You must see that's designed to injure and, I believe, ultimately kill you. But you won't be able to escape that, because all your money will also be associated with your digital ID. So let's say you've gone to a supermarket, you want to buy a drink and a sandwich. You'll beat them through and it'll say, how do you pay? And it'll say, present your digital ID. And the cash register, as it were, the cashless system, won't proceed until you show it your QR code. And if you're not vaccinated, and if that means your digital ID is not valid, it'll say, sorry, transaction refused. The merchant will not be able to sell you the product. So you can see how difficult this is. Now, a valid digital ID, just like a valid passport, is today required to cross a border. And I have no problem with a passport, of course. But I'd be pretty cross if to buy petrol I had to show my passport, or to buy a bottle of water I had to show my passport. But that is what's coming. You'll have to show your digital ID. If you said hurty words on the internet, you might find that your digital money doesn't work. If you're outside of your 15-minute zone and you're not authorized to be, you will not be able to buy anything. That's what's coming. It's the ultimate tool of slavery, the digital. It's called the digital gulag by other people. I think that's not a bad phrase. And the way to stop that happening is to put your foot down and don't sign up for it. If they tell you, say you're, if it's a government, they might say, we're not going to give you benefits unless you sign up for digital ID. I can't help that. I'm going to tell you, you at this point have to choose. Obviously going to engineer it so that you'll feel you can't refuse. If you sign up for it, your life is going to end. Your free life is going to end. So I would say, like I always did with the jabs before I really knew what was going on, I would say, don't decide anything now. Defer your decision a month, maybe another month. Same with digital ID. Please, when it's first put to you, and especially if they threaten you, we'll have to fire you if you won't sign up for this. This is good for you, is it? Why would they threaten you? Why would they punish you for not doing something that's supposedly good for you? And the answer is, I mentioned earlier, always two reasons: the ostensible reason, the excuse, or the real reason. And the threats come because the real reason is what I've been telling you. It's for bad. So if they tell you they won't pay your benefits if you don't sign up for digital ID, I'm going to ask you to swallow hard and not sign up. You might have to sign up in a month or 3 months. Don't sign up. The more people who don't sign up, the more likely we are to be able to defeat this, because other people will be taking their lead from you. So if you've got children, I think you should be willing to go hungry for a bit. If I have to, I will, in order to stop this happening. So I made the bold statement, I'm not going to take on a digital ID. And some people have said, you will lose access to your money in your bank accounts. Do you know what? So be it. If I sign up for it, what's going to happen is what I've outlined to you. Money's not going to matter. One, they'll steal it. And secondly, I don't want to survive in a world in which I'm beeping my way into and out of shops and beeping my way to buy some moldy bread with insect flour, right? I'm not going to live in that world. So I'm just going to stop. And the worse the punishment threatened brought upon me, the worse the retribution, the more sure you should be that this is a bad thing. So even if they say we're going to fire you, say respectfully, I don't trust this system. I'm going to defer my decision. I'm not going to sign up this month. Let them fire you. I think they'll have to give up. Remember NHS 100K when they said, we're going to jab you all or you'll lose your job. And 100,000 of them campaigned on the street, and the government actually gave in the next week. So there's enough power if we only just take our courage in our hands. And you only need courage when you're threatened. You need some courage now. You need some courage now.
And finally, I just want to end with this word from Sherry Tenpenny. As the parent of a vax-damaged child myself, she's been a huge encouragement to me over the years and kind of a personal hero of mine. So I look forward to giving her a big hug in heaven one day, just to thank her for the work that she's done. But here she is talking about the digital ID as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and I want to do a quick update about a document that got passed by the United Nations this weekend called the Pact of the Future document. It's 2 parts, one on science and technology and one about the youth and future generations. It is quite egregious, and it was done by a procedure called the silence procedure, which makes it a pact. And if no one objected, it is automatically adopted and put into the record as being completely adopted. This is the World Health Organization's runaround, or end around. Since they were not able to get the World Health Organization treaty passed, they decided to take it to the General Assembly. And it is even more egregious than what the World Health Organization was wanting to get passed. Let me just read you something really quickly about what is inside of this pact that is now being accepted by 193 nations around the world and equally open-armed accepted by our current administration. Everyone, it says that this is the power structure, fully digital and maximized for the control of the masses. Everyone will be expected to have a biometric digital ID that marks them not just as citizens of an individual country, but as a global citizen. So anytime you hear global citizen or anytime you hear sustainability, think that this is an egregious thing that's happening at the level of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Anyone that has a dissonant opinion will be labeled as misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation and memory hold. Perpetrators for unapproved information will be fact-checked and punished by the system, which will be operated and enforced by artificial intelligence. Punishments will include being locked out of one's bank account, being unable to make certain purchases, unable to get on an airplane, on a subway, drive on public roads. This is the future, according to the world's self-appointed overlords at the United Nations. These are unelected bureaucrats that are making decisions about our country, our sovereignty around the world. Nothing could be more important at this point in time than to get prepared. Have water, food, digital access, flashlights, a way to communicate with family and friends. Now is really the time to get involved and get prepared, because this is what's coming. Our Congress is sitting on its hands. There was a press conference on the 17th about this, and no further action has been taken. So it's up to us to mobilize and to go forward, particularly with your local sheriffs, to get your constitutional sheriffs to say, this isn't going to be allowed in my county. Thank you very much. Take action. We've been talking about the onset of one world order, one world government, one world religion, one world money for a long time. Well, it's no longer coming. It's here.
We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms. But we are under invasion from within. We're stopping it very quickly. After spending trillions of dollars defending the borders of foreign countries, with your help, we're defending the borders of our country from now on. But we're running it based on common sense and based on love of our country. But I want to salute every service member who has helped us carry out this critical mission. It's really a very important mission. And I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city with an incompetent governor, stupid governor, stupid.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the thing
you like this idea?
Donald Trump is preparing to declare martial law. Donald Trump is sending troops into cities like Portland, Chicago, Los Angeles, Baltimore, Memphis, etc., not to reduce crime. If you believe that, you're very, very naive. Trump couldn't care less about crime in any place that didn't overwhelmingly vote for him. Please prepare yourself and your families. Once he declares martial law, the midterms won't happen, and we may never have another election again. Please be ready for this.
And President Trump told NTD on Monday that he believes that the rampant attacks on ICE agents in cities like Chicago are part of a criminal insurrection, and that these attackers will be severely punished. He also defended the deployment of National Guard troops to cities like Chicago and Portland, saying that he has no choice to save these cities.
I want to make sure that people aren't killed.
These attackers have to be organized, and they're planning to kill and ambush these RCMP. What are the consequences for you?
Very severe. We're going to have very severe conflict. We're going to find out who's going after our federal agents, whether it's National Guard or the military or anybody. I mean, if women raped and beaten and knocked to hell, and the same with men where they're being shot all over the place in large numbers, it's going to be lost if you don't do it. We have no choice but to do this.
A legal showdown is unfolding as Democratic officials in Oregon and Illinois today sued the Trump administration over its order to deploy National Guard troops to their cities. A judge on Sunday blocked the administration's deployment of National Guard troops from other states to Portland. But the administration has filed an emergency appeal seeking to proceed with the deployment and insisting that the president does have the authority to send the troops in. And meanwhile, as we're seeing a surge in attacks on ICE, including a shooting in Dallas targeting an ICE facility, as well as just this past weekend in Chicago, where 10 cars were zoning in on ICE agents and another car was trying to ram into an ICE vehicle. A White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller told NTV today that he believes such attacks are part of organized domestic terrorism. To what extent does the administration believe that such attacks are organized?
Yeah, as I've said repeatedly, this is organized domestic terrorism. So when you have a 10-car ramming attack with armed attackers clearly intending to murder ICE officers and convicts, what else can you call them?
And President Trump says he will invoke the Insurrection Act if judges and local officials continue holding up and impeding administration's efforts in making these cities safe. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
We are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens.
We are shifting to a new financial system, but the general population is not shifting to a new financial system. It's shifting to a control grid.
CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contracts, to allow targeted policy functions. For example, welfare payment. For example, consumption coupon. For example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized.
The key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations, and also we will have the technology to enforce that.
They're saying we can control with rules. We don't need currency anymore. And so it's no longer a financial system or currency system. It's purely a digital concentration camp. It's a slavery system.
Make me a man of no compromise, who has no ties but only eyes for your will. So I can hear your voice, rejoice, rejoice, and make my choice that I will live for you. So swift and fast that I might last, 'cause I know the time won't stand still. I refuse to die inside the lie that was the life, but time to compromise. much to gain, but you just can't see my soul. Now set my face just like a stone.